Welcome, everyone. If we have not met, my name is Athena Payne. I am the chiropractor at Salen's Chiropractic Clinic, and I try my best to work tirelessly to support people and motivate them to improve their health. And by you attending this webinar, you obviously want to learn more to improve your health. So I welcome you today. And we will be learning what chronic inflammation means for your body, why you are reading about it more and more, and the importance the FDA and National Institute of Health are placing on chronic inflammation. What we'll do is we'll look at how an anti-inflammatory diet can help you face down the challenge of controlling, managing, and postponing disease associated with chronic inflammation. By addressing each element of an anti-inflammatory diet, we can target easy changes first. So as we go through this webinar today, I want to make sure and make very evident to you the first step to implementing an anti-inflammatory diet and adding some anti-inflammatory foods, you have to make baby steps. Especially if you love food and you love all kinds of food. If you want to make a change in your health and encourage healing in your body, you have to make baby steps in order to be successful. So rather than completing changing your diet overnight, you might find it easier to make some incremental changes before moving on to the next challenge. Now, before we get started, I want to state just a brief disclaimer. For educational purposes only, this seminar is just for that. And I want to remind you, don't begin any dietary changes until you have contacted either myself or your medical doctor, and I have also reviewed your medical history. This information that I'm going to present to you today is not intended to treat or cure any medical condition. Okay, so again, welcome. And I want to give you a presentation outline just so you know what we'll be covering. As I begin preparing for this webinar today, I realized that you need many more webinars to go into more detail about inflammation. It is so detailed, and there's so many things that affect your body when it comes to inflammation. And so this webinar, I'm going to call it part one. We're going to cover the basics. What is inflammation? What are the types of inflammation? What happens to the body when you have acute inflammation versus chronic inflammation? And I want to answer the question for a lot of people, what causes chronic inflammation and how does it contribute to actually you getting diseases? They're finding out the basis of many diseases is inflammation. So one question you may want to know towards the end of this presentation is, well, how do I know if I have chronic inflammation? And then you're probably going to want to know at that point also is, how do I heal or reduce the inflammation from the inside out? Okay, so before we tackle reducing inflammation, we need to know what it is, what it does to you. And inflammation is an innate process. It's something you're born with. You don't have to tell your body to have this protective response whenever you have an injury. It does this process by diluting and destroying and neutralizing harmful agents. So it's like an army in your body that's set up to be able to protect your body. And the whole point of inflammation is to heal the site of injury. But during this repair, you may get what's called fibrous scar tissue. Now, to what extent you get this scar tissue depends on many factors, and we'll see that shortly. Inflammation is known as the silent killer. You've heard that high blood pressure is the silent killer, cardiovascular disease is the silent killer, but the basic foundation of all these diseases you see on the screen is inflammation. The more you reduce inflammation and the acidity in your body, the more basic your body gets, the less disease you will have, and that's the key to having good health. The second thing I said that I'm going to answer for you is really to help you decipher and know what's the difference between acute inflammation and chronic inflammation. So say, you just injured yourself, or you were out in the garden all day and then, towards the end of the day, your back is really hurting. It just happened. So it's called acute inflammation. So in the early stages, you have a reaction in the tissues in the area where you're having your injury. And the body is so smart, it has a cascade of events that occurs. And some of the cardinal signs of acute inflammation is swelling, okay? It's heat, it's pain, obviously, and discomfort. Sometimes there's redness. And most importantly, the most important thing is you will have loss of function. So if you've been gardening all day, your low back hurts, well, now you can't bend over or you can't straighten up. Or it's hard for you to sit for a long time now or to stand for a long time because your back is really upset because you were gardening all day. Okay, that's acute inflammation. There's two stages to acute inflammation. There's the vascular stage and the cellular stage. And what's pretty cool is that your body tries to wall off the injury, and it does this first by the vascular stage. And so soon after you have an injury, the area of injury becomes very congested. That's where you get the redness and the warmth and the swelling. And then the next step is that you have an increase of swelling, or what's called exudates. That's the scientific name for it, the medical term, that infiltrates the area. So you have an increase of fluid in the area. And your body wants to flush that out and really dilute that area. Now, because we don't want to spread any infectious microorganisms that may be associated with the injury, your body is so smart that it actually stagnates the circulation in the area. So you have more and more buildup of fluid in the area. And that's why when you hurt yourself, you become very, very stiff. That's why if you do hurt your back by gardening all day, your back is very, very stiff and sore. It's because you have this increase of exudates in the area. So the next stage, or the next flow of what we want to call the army that's supposed to protect our body, we have the cellular stage, and you have an infiltration of white blood cells into the area. These are chemical mediators and enzymes that's going to help break down and destroy the injurious agent that could be possibly in that area. So your body pretty much sends out soldiers to clean up and kill the foreign agent that is in that area. Okay, let's pull. Hold on, a little technical difficulty. Let's reload our presentation. Sorry guys, I've been having computer issues all day. Come on, computer. Okay, here we go. All right, let's go. I think my computer's on vacation. Okay, so let's start and let's go. Come on. All right. Now let's move on to chronic inflammation. This is the part that's pretty important. So usually when acute inflammation is never resolved, so say you hurt your back and you're like, you know, it'll wear itself off. It'll get better. I'm just going to wait for it to work itself off. You know, then it becomes a self-perpetuating and repetitive cycle. And you have that continuation of scar tissue that's developed in acute inflammation. So basically, the acute inflammation process keeps going and repeating and repeating and repeating. Chronic inflammation can last for weeks to years. Now, the longer you have this chronic inflammation, the harder it is to fix it. So, you know, it's just like when you get your chiropractic adjustments. If sometimes, depending on what stage of healing and correction you're in, sometimes, you know, if you go longer than 2 weeks, depending on, again, where you are in your healing, after 2 weeks, that malalignment or misalignment becomes a permanent thing. And so that's why sometimes I tell patients no more than 2 weeks. Okay. Now, in chronic inflammation, there's different phases. And the only thing I want you to know, basically, is that it's recurrent, it's progressive. You have cells that infiltrate the area now. Okay, so before we had just regular white blood cells trying to clean up the area. Well, if you have cells called macrophages repeating the cycle, and macrophages like to go and eat the foreign agent. But if you keep having these cells, they're eventually going to eat the good tissue. Scar tissue continues, congestion of circulation continues. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Now, the medical treatment. We're going to talk about the medical treatment for inflammation and the conservative treatment for inflammation. So here are some facts when it comes to NSAIDs. Okay, these are anti-inflammatories. These are like naproxen, Aleve, ibuprofen, and this is the most common thing that's given to people who have inflammation. So there's an epidemic, you know, with certain drugs, and one of the classes of drugs where there is an epidemic are NSAIDs. And the FDA believes anywhere from 10 to 20,000 deaths each year are the result of severe bleeding from NSAIDs, and it's a huge problem. Most sufferers continue to seek partial or temporary relief through aspirin, ibuprofen, Motrin, and sometimes Tylenol. Now, these medications have a place. Okay, it's for use for temporary use, not for chronic use, not for lifetime use, because it can lead to GI bleeding and ulcers. It also contributes to hypertension, congestive heart failure, kidney failure, liver disease, and I've seen a lot of extremity swelling associated with the chronic use of NSAIDs. And just averaging 2 aspirin a day, just 2, from the age of 25 to 64 increases your chances. Doesn't mean you'll get it, but it increases your chances of kidney disease by 900%. That is crazy. And so, you know, if you have other diseases going on in your body that's going to affect your kidneys, this goes even higher. So each year, approximately 20,000 people die, and tens of thousands more are hospitalized because of these medications. And also, if you want to know the sources of where I got this information from, I can always email that to you as well. So now let's look at the natural herbal medications and nutritional supplementations that's available for you. Now, everybody, or many people, have heard about glucosamine chondroitin sulfate. Okay, that's good for building up your cartilage. And then one supplement you may not have heard of is MSM. Sometimes you'll find these two medications together, and sometimes you'll find these two medications blended in with in a blend in other supplements. And so I have some in my office where there's a blend of these supplements as well. So MSM, if you hadn't heard about it, the thing that makes it very important is that for connective tissue is blood, ligaments, muscle, and bone. And so in order for that to develop, you have to have sulfur. And so a good organic source of sulfur is MSM. Sure, you can find it in fruits and vegetables, especially cruciferous vegetables, but you can also get it as a supplement. And so it's important for skin, hair, and nails, obviously, because they are connective tissues. It is responsible for the rigidity and strength of your connective tissue. And so one thing that you may not know is sulfur is very important and needed in order to make chondroitin sulfate, hence the name sulfate. So these two together are very good at supporting your connective tissues and reducing inflammation. Now, in my clinic, I offer, and we'll talk about this really shortly, I offer different nutritional programs. Some are 10 days, some are 21 days, some are 28 days. If you want to jumpstart, for example, reducing your inflammation or losing weight, I always recommend that you start off with one of the 10-day programs, especially if you have a lifetime of eating a lot of processed foods and just eating everything you want to eat, okay? And you need some discipline as far as how to eat cleaner. So one of the things I recommend, and I find that's very good for people to start with, is the 10-day anti-inflammation program. And these are some of the supplements that are included in this program. And so the first one at the top is called Standard Process Complete. Now, real quickly, when you go into the clinic, you'll see on the coffee table some background information about Standard Process. Standard Process is a whole food organic company. They basically make their supplements by taking the food that they grow off of their farm, compacting it, and building supplements. Now, what you will find with some of their regimens is you need to take a lot of pills. And the reason you do is because the supplements are, in order for them to get to a therapeutic level, because they're minimally processed, you have to take a bunch of them to get a therapeutic effect. However, it's very good that these supplements are whole food based supplements. So the next thing here on the list is SP Cleanse. This is super, super good at removing toxins. It's one of the main things that you will see in a lot of Standard Processes programs. It helps supports the body's toxin removal process. And there's many phases to detoxification, and you have to take supplements, or you have to have the dietary support for your body to properly break down toxins, break them down into a safe substance, and then properly remove them. And so a lot of cleanses and detoxification programs over the counter, some of them are lacking that, and you can actually make more toxins, the toxins that you do have, worse than the toxins that you already had stored in your body. The next thing is the Boswellia complex. Boswellia, another name for it is frankincense, and you may be familiar with frankincense when it comes to essential oils. But this complex has, and you can see on the screen, you're starting to see a lot of people say, ooh, take turmeric for anti-inflammation. And so turmeric is very important to have as well, but you have to combine it with other things, like curcumin, and in this complex you have ginger. Ginger is very good at reducing inflammation, and celery seed. And celery seed is real good at encouraging the function of your kidneys. The next one here is Cyruta Plus. It supports the capillary integrity and function. So we learned earlier how important the circulation is and what role it plays in the area of inflammation. And so to make sure that your circulatory system has good integrity and it's functioning properly, Cyruta Plus is something else that I recommend in the anti-inflammatory 10-day program. The last one is blackcurrant seed oil. It supports the body's normal tissue repair process, normal blood flow, and immune system function. So we talked about earlier about normal tissue repair, how important that is, how you have the infiltration of white blood cells to clean out the area and to get rid of foreign agents. This currant seed oil helps with normal blood flow, something else to help with circulation. And the whole process of inflammation that your body naturally has, it is an immune response. So this black currant seed oil helps encourage a properly functioning, healthy immune system. So this is a good combination, a good package to help you reduce your inflammation. If you have questions about that program, just contact me and I can tell you more. Okay, so let's talk about foods to avoid, because I know that's on your mind. Well, what do I need to get rid of in order to reduce my inflammation? Okay, now you may be familiar with nightshade foods. So some of these you can, if you love these foods, you can just try to use them in moderation at first. A lot of these foods can be acidic as well, and so that's the part that results in the inflammation. As far as potatoes, especially, we know white potatoes are considered nightshade foods as well. And so you want to try your best to reduce these in your diet, or don't eat them as much as possible or in large quantities. The other things that you can do, you don't have to remove all these at once if you have all these in your kitchen, but you can start working on making better choices or reducing the amount that you have in your home. And anything that's refined has been processed. So if you're looking on the back of your food in the ingredients and it says refined, put it back on the shelf because it basically has no nutritional value. So, you know, white bread, whole wheat bread, most pastas, cereals, pretzels, crackers, all the good stuff, right? Desserts, all the tasty things. Not necessarily, but, you know, that's the stuff that we crave sometimes when we're craving either sugar or some women who are anemic, or people in general who are anemic, will crave flour. And so you want to use these in moderation as well. If you are gluten sensitive, then you want to be careful about wheat, rye, and barley being in your foods. Gluten is a whole nother webinar, so we're going to skip over that, and we're going to continue. What else you can remove are partially hydrogenated oils. So there was a debate for a long time about margarine versus butter. So if you can, basically research says now that grass-fed butter is the best out of the two. You want to avoid deep fried foods. You want to avoid fast foods and eating out all the time. Ideally, you're supposed to eat out once or twice a month, not a couple times a week, because the oils and foods that they use in restaurants, they're usually very inflammatory. Some other oils to stay away from would be corn oil, safflower, sunflower oil, peanut oil. I know some people say, you know, it has been advertised that peanut oil is the safest. But, you know, I guess that's still under debate, but peanuts do have a inflammatory immune response for many people. So, you know, be careful about its use. A lot of salad dressings, you just have to watch packaged foods, and you want to avoid sodas as much as possible. So just looking at this list, it can be disheartening because when you go in the grocery store, it feels like there's nothing in there you can eat. Everything is made of all these things or is hidden somewhere in the food. It's unfortunate. So I always tell people, try your best to go to farmers markets where they have locally grown and real locally grown organic grass-fed foods. You know, you don't have food or produce that's been sitting on a truck for weeks before it gets to the store if you actually go to the grocery store. So that's something that you can do, is make a better choice that way. Now, the only thing on this slide I really want you to pay attention to is make sure you're drinking water. And If you look towards the bottom here, it's recommended that for men that you drink at least 3 liters total liquid a day. If that's hard for you, at least drink half your body weight in ounces. And for women, to about 2 liters of total liquid a day. Okay, so if you're exhausted all the time and you're not a big water drinker, it could be because, well, 70%, a little bit over plus or minus of your body is water, and it needs water to function. And if you're not putting it in there, you're going to run out of gas. So that's why you get so tired. And sometimes just implementing water will make a huge difference on your energy. Okay, let's talk about, okay, well, you told me what not to eat. What can I eat? Okay, so when we're talking about fruits and vegetables, you definitely want to get fresh or frozen. If you're going to eat vegetables, the best way to eat them is raw or steamed. As far as fruits, you want to pick antioxidant-rich fruits like raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, black cherries and pears and grapefruits. The richer the color, the more antioxidants they have. And going back to vegetables real quick, the darker the green of the vegetable, the more antioxidant it has as well. So some good examples would be broccoli, arugula, spinach, lettuce, red lettuce, also Brussels sprouts. And you can also add in there, cauliflower. You see a lot of cauliflower rice now, and cauliflower pizza crust, and those are good alternatives that you can add. Okay. Now, some other things you can add, maybe in your smoothies, you can add kale, you can add avocado, it has good fats in it. Avocado, be careful. If it's not organic and you eat too many avocados, they're saying that you can get a lot of toxins that way. Try your best to get organic avocados. Okay, so those are some things that you can add. Okay, so this is a little excerpt from my from the anti-inflammatory 10-day program. So usually when I have patients do this, there's a list of foods in each food category that you can only pick from. You can't go outside the list, because these foods that are on here encourage decreased inflammation in your body. So you don't want to add any foods that's going to counteract the role that you're trying to accomplish. Okay, so again, we talked about, okay, for vegetables, artichokes, asparagus, avocados, carrots, cauliflower, kale, mushrooms, squash, and tomatoes is on here. And I always say it is a nightshade vegetable. Try your best to use it in moderation. Now, the serving size for vegetables for this program is a half cup. And so you want 13 to 15 servings of vegetables a day. Okay, and I'm going to show you what your plate is supposed to look like on an anti-inflammatory diet. So lots of vegetables. And it's very good for you when you're eating all these vegetables, especially the green vegetables. You want to change those out very often. You want to rotate your vegetables. If you're always putting the same, for example, kale in your smoothies every day, every day, there's a substance in kale, for example, or in green vegetables that if you keep using it, it can turn into a toxin. So some people don't know that. So you want to rotate your greens that you're putting in your body from week to week. Okay, now starchy vegetables. I love lentils. Lentils are so good, but they are starchy, and they can raise your blood sugar if you eat too many. And so you want to limit your starchy vegetables that are listed here. Serving size is a half cup. You want to limit to 3 servings a day. So again, fruit. You want to, basically for fruit, okay, and with this program, you're going to do shakes, and you want to only incorporate fruit in your shakes, because in between your shakes, you're going to be eating, and so you don't want too much fruit throughout the day. Fruit does have its own sugar, so again, you don't want to raise your blood sugar levels. That raises inflammation. As for protein, I always recommend, say for example, if you eat 3 times a day, 3 full meals a day, at least substitute one of those meals to just be plant-based. Eventually you want to get to that. You don't have to go vegan or vegetarian. But it's good to just do that every now and then to give your digestive tract a break. Nuts and seeds. You always want to stick to raw and unsalted nuts. You can get sprouted nuts. Sprouted nuts, they're labeled, where the nuts are labeled raw, unsalted, and you'll see nuts sometimes labeled sprouted. And there's not too many stores that sell sprouted nuts. Sprouted nuts really increase the ability of your digestive tract to break down the nuts. And so some roasted nuts have gluten in them. So you want to be careful if you are gluten sensitive to watch out for the roasted nuts, even if they're roasted and unsalted. Okay, so raw and unsalted and sprouted if you can. Let's see, now as far as your oils, just like the Mediterranean diet, you want to stick to your olive oil. You want healthy, cold-pressed olive oil. And you want butter. Again, what we talked about earlier. Kind of stay away from margarine. That's also another webinar on its own. Okay, you want filtered spring water. And as far as caffeination, you definitely say if you're a coffee drinker, you want to limit your coffee to no more than 2 cups a day. Coffee is acidic. It has some great properties associated with it, and there's some great things about coffee that's good for you, especially the organic coffee. But because of its acidity and you're trying to reduce your inflammation, you want to limit your coffee intake. Okay. So this is just a little flyer about the 10-day Healthy Inflammation Response Program. Again, if you have any or want any information on that, just let me know. What I usually do, and if, for example, my patient is okay with it, the best thing to do is to do certain blood work that looks at your GI tract, your intestines, to see if you have leaky gut, because that can lead to inflammation. I'll talk more about that in a future webinar about inflammation. You can do some other blood work that gives some specifics of whether you may have inflammation in your body. So it's good to do that blood work at first, do the program, and then do the blood work again. It's not extensive blood work, but it's specific tests that you need to do. And it would be great for you to see the before and after the 10 days. So this is a picture of what your plate should look like when you're doing your anti-inflammatory diet. And your plate should be 60% vegetables, not 60% meat, not 60% dessert, but 60% vegetables, 30% protein. And then 5% miscellaneous, whether you want to add another one of those categories that we talked about earlier, or you want to add nuts and seeds. But definitely, you know, if you want to add one of the starchy vegetables or something like that, you can do that here, but just 5%. So usually during this program, you're doing shakes, you're doing your supplements, and you're eating throughout the day. Keep your blood sugar level and your metabolism revved up. Okay, so it's a combination of things. It's just 10 days, but 10 days to really make a difference in your life. And you will see, because pain is inflammation. When you're hurting, it's inflammation. If you can reduce inflammation, you can reduce your pain. It'd be great if every patient of mine was doing this program. Okay, so Let's move along and let's go to um, just really quickly the beans, pastas, and whole grains. Um, on a lot of labels on foods, you see whole grains, 100% whole grain. And so if you're transitioning, for example, from flour-based pasta, and you want to make better choices and inch your way to gluten-free pastas or um, brown rice-based pasta or quinoa-based pasta, then switching to whole grain is a nice transition into that area. So you have to make baby steps. Um, Now I'm starting to see a lot of pastas, for example, that are bean based as well. So there's more variety that's coming out now in grocery stores. Okay, for fats, fish, and soy. So healthy fats, some examples you want to include, again, the avocado. You want to also include cold water fish like codfish. And be careful about your foods that have soy. If you like foods with soy, whether it's milk, whether it's soybeans, whether it's edamame, um, you want to keep soy to condiment use, like soy sauce or something like that. But really using it as a staple in your system, especially for women, you got to watch out because soy, too much soy can increase too much estrogen. You can get a lot of issues with high estrogen. And that's how you get your fibroids and all these other issues. So yeah, you have to watch out for that. Okay. So we covered that already. So lastly, I want to give you some examples of my favorite anti-inflammatory meals. Okay, and an example is zucchini bread. And if you have your phone, you can take a picture of this. But you're using coconut oil, there's almond flour, baking soda, ground cinnamon. Cinnamon's good for reducing blood sugar. There's some pecans in here, and if you have to sweeten it, use stevia. Though this makes a very good zucchini bread. So if you have to have bread, this is a good substitution. I told you I like lentils, but mixing it with squash, it helps reduce some of the starchiness in lentils. So I like to mix in my lentil soup some extra vegetables. So I like to put kale, and I also like to put carrots in there as well. So yeah, you can add butternut squash. I like to use, when I can, organic chicken stock. You can add some cumin, not to be confused with curcumin. Curcumin is a substance that can be found with turmeric to reduce your inflammation. Okay, so this is another one. You're more than welcome to take a picture of that as well. Okay, so I hope that you enjoyed this introductory presentation. There are a lot of ifs with things, you know, you hear that's good, then tomorrow you hear is bad. But if you stick to the basics and the basic food that comes from the earth, you stick to vegetables and have a low acidic diet, you will make strides in your health and you'll make strides in your pain and function. And so again, if you want to know more about the anti-inflammatory diet, by all means contact me. You can do it in the clinic, or you can email me at salenschiroclinic@gmail.com, or you can call the clinic at 817-731-4848. See?